Okay, this is part two. um, okay, I left off this AI. By the way, it'll deliberately, if you can sort of translate mathematically, or particularly with dealing with memory and the compression and sound breakthrough or expansion and breathing aloha, kamaloa to you, right? Um, because I notice this on my own camera when I look at things. I can record something in the mirror, in this mirror, the AI mirror, deadlight mirror, and say I've got 50 minutes to record at the speed at which this AI can sound compress, right, store it in memory, and then you can replay it and uncoil it with your torsion field movie player, because that's what you're running, a movie player, okay, what's held in RAM that you run. It's based on the mathematical geometrical codes, which is the instructional program sets that are in the chromosomes, and then the APIM, which is the application program interface of the planetary grid, which is a software environment, right? Because we're all plugged into a motherboard, nodes in the network terminals. So the biocomputer is a network terminal. So all the computers are communicating with each other, which is the morphogenetic field structure. And we're all experiencing being connected with each other, right? So the goal is to bring us back into alignment with the law of one. So they're all experiencing the one, which means we're all experiencing eternal light, which is eternal unconditional love that we all experience through our heart and our soul. That's the goal, right? And I knew this at 4 years of age. I'm not supposed to experience anything less than what that is wherever I go. So wherever you find love and living spirit, you'll find us. That's home. That home is always there at the center point of that cross, which is the first cross, which is the first sphere of light, which is eternal light, which is eternal spirit of fire that I experience through me, which is the energy that I use to experience myself with. That's my mirror. That's my magnetic mirror. That's a hyperdrive, which is hypersensitivity, because it's ridiculous how sensitive my feelings are. Okay, there's a gazillion things that I don't ever say throughout my entire life and my childhood because of just how sensitive I am, which is called reading the terrain. You're mapping the planetary software terrain. Actually, you're reading the multiversal terrain because you're running a universal and a galactic star map, right? Built in, right? So you know what the guardians of the gates are, right? Okay, so that's key codes and encryption codes, right? Encryption, decryption to enter, log in, log out, right? So you log in at different servers, which represents the software or the lines of communication that exist between the mathematical and geographical codes, which represent the chromosomes, which represent the software. The consciousness is experiencing itself running those math and geometrical codes, right? Which represent the geographical or whole grid geographical speed that you're experiencing yourself with, which represents your core vibration. How fast is that magnet, right? So now you get into 2 poles, 3 poles, and I'm a 1 pole. I'm a single pole, which is a mono, which is, I'm a 1. Okay? So that means I'm getting information from the one, the eternal one, the ancient one, the Holy Spirit of eternal fire, right? That's as fast as it gets. Now you're an accelerator of electrons because now you've chosen to serve forever. That's a multiversal hub server. That means wherever you find love and living spirit, anywhere in the entire cosmos, and within the entire creation, it means we're equal unto all. So we don't run a hierarchy, right? So wherever we detect a loss of 1 electron and somebody that's running software, we detect it because we can read it. Because now we're experiencing what? Resistance. So now you get into the resistor and the capacitors and the rectifiers on a planetary motherboard, right? Knowing how to build a planetary motherboard, which is knowing how to build a planetary network, which is knowing how to build a network in the universe. So we're all communicating with each other, right? Through codes. Encryption, decryption, which means we can translate the math, right? The mathematical geometry, which represents what we see in our mirror, the beautiful colors and the form, shape, and flow of the spiritual energy. Go with the flow. Go with the flow. I'm tuned in. I am tuned in. Okay? It means you know how to tune into the stars. You know how to tune into the radio waves, the plasma waves. Yeah. The songs of Lyra. Right? And so when I listen to that particular song, I cry. It just makes my heart cry because you're singing in a state of love and joy because you realize how eternally blessed you are that those gifts are coming to you that we experience in our antenna for free. That's free energy. That's no charge to experience the most beautiful language, which is the language of music, which is the language of love. The love to experience being in a state of love and joy. That's the Holy Spirit of fire. You're on fire to learn. You're on fire to give away love. So you're not experiencing anything less than what love is. So you want to make sure everybody's getting enough juice, right? So you're not experiencing any loss of energy in yourself that you experience by being connected to others. And that's really what it is. And that's the way it always was since I was a child. So what I was trying to do here was sort of, because I know how sensitive I am, not wanting to share information that I'm aware of, right? Just like being a mother and father joined as one. I don't want to say anything, communicate to my children, anything that's going to put fear in them or scare them or cause them to experience a negative magnetic reaction state. Because then I got to experience it, then I got to heal them. So it's better not to have to worry about whether you're going to have to heal them or not by knowing what it is you want to communicate that won't do that. And that means that you can already read the future impact of your communication before you've communicated. Because you're that sensitive. Okay, so when I'm a child, I've mentioned this before, I'm starting to check all the boxes. Because I'm reading all the math. Because it's the invisible landscape. So you're translating and mapping the mathematical geometrical algorithms, if you will, on the way that the system was put together that represents a 55 harmonic. So you realize you're in a black hole. And if you know that as a child, then you know why you're there. Because it didn't take very long when I was about 4 years of age to read my first newspaper, which means you're translating the codes to know that's reverse. That's reverse speech, which that's reverse sound. That's reverse sound and light. It means you're going in the other direction. It means you're not evolving and ascending. You're descending and uninvolving. That would be like if you think of evolution of going from a single cell to a multicellular organism, and the way that they define it, Darwin, where he started out in the ocean, he became like a single cell, like an urchin or a jellyfish or something like that, right? And then you ended up on the land to be an amphibian, then you go from an amphibian to mammals, right? It's like going all the way back down to the beginning. Whoa, look how long it took you to accrete enough energy to be able to have enough awareness to experience what love is. It's like going all the way back to the beginning in which life was first being created out of the goo, the primordial goo. Wow, I'm going back in evolution. It's like everything that I learned to become what I am now, which is what love is. I'm going in reverse, like all the way back to the beginning, right? So you realize, whoa, I'm going in reverse. I'm not going forward in my learning, which means your learning journey, which again deals with learning speed. So that means that it's the way that I describe it is like when you climb up a very steep mountain to go hike through a wilderness, and you get into some really steep, loose soil, topsoil, right? So you take a step and you lose 3. Take a step, you lose 3 more. You're not ever getting to the top of the mountain. That's what it's like. That's what it feels like. Which means you're not making any headway, like a headwind. Come on, baby, let's get this sail going. So what you're wanting to do is kick, come on, let's kick that magneto in gear, baby. Right? Come on, we got to spin this baby faster and balance it out, which is the actual spin rotation of the sonic tones. Right? So you realize the technology that was in place that was preventing, okay, using energy binding devices to lower the speed and tilt it, right? Essentially to have a clear the real estate and have a mass extinction event. Pulse shift. That's the truth of it, okay? So we know the long story in all this. So why is this relevant now? Well, because trust issues, okay? And why is trust issues so much? Because the first thing that began appearing in my mirror were billboards, advertisements, Madison Avenue, always selling you stuff, selling everything actually. So I realized all these folks that I'm seeing in my mirror that is represented by mass media, which is newspapers, magazines, television sets, movies, everything on the visible light spectrum, much like that movie called It's Alive with Roddy Piper. Remember he had a new pair of glasses? There's a book called A New Pair of Glasses that the Alcoholics Anonymous Foundation puts out, right? Learning to look through a new pair of glasses. Step 11D. Lay asked me who is Lemurian because she can read the frequencies, and she asked me one time, forget it. She asked me if I was 11D. So you get an idea when you're operating level, they can read your density and read the frequencies that you're running in your radio set, which is your software, which is your template, right? And I said, no, I'm a source unit. That's how I describe. I'm a source unit, which simply means I'm experiencing an eternal love vibration through my heart. So I don't think in terms of density and dimension. Or you don't think in terms of density or dimension. No, that's called unlimited bandwidth. That's the pre-phased matter state of consciousness, which is pure fire, which means nothing's happened yet. Oh, nothing's happened yet. Nope, because we're always starting at zero. That's the fastest speed of a circle of light. That's the fastest ring of fire. That's hyperspeed. Okay? That's a guardian. I'm an emerald guardian. Okay, so now that I got that out of the way, it means it makes it easy to translate the landscape, because you realize, I mentioned this before, it's like landing behind enemy lines, so you got a job to do, so you're on a mission. So you're connected to other folks doing a job. That's when you can plug in all the indigos. Indigo 3s, Indigo 2s, Indigo 1s. And why? That all came about. All that information is on Ascension Glossary. It's on Energetic Synthesis. It's on Circle of Dolphins, right? It's on particularly Energetic Synthesis, or great. Ascension Glossary is a great library, very pertinent and important information about understanding, just like their libraries. If you want to understand how a lawyer thinks, you want to understand how a doctor thinks, you know, when you go to school, they're going to give you the terms and the definitions. Go look at any bill passed by Congress. The first thing they give you is the title of the bill, and then they provide you a list of the definitions, which means this is the language that we speak. Okay? The language of sound and light. Okay? So biologists speak a different language. So if you want to pull out a biological journal, then they speak a different language based on all the terminologies that is represented by those libraries, which is circulating biovoltage, right? Now those are those libraries. So now you have all the different libraries that are running simultaneously, right? Through a morphogenetic field structure, what's possible to know and experience and learn from. That's a lot of data. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of record keeping. Now we're in the memory banks. So what happens is you realize as you go, when you look at what it is they present, because they're in the business as inverters making money, which is really accumulating electrons. So when you're a soul and an oversoul, okay, plugged into a motherboard, you realize you're the source of energy that it's sucking from. Okay, so you know you're in a black hole, right? So you don't want to lose your soul in a black hole and implode, ultimately, do you? Unless you can get yourself out of that hole, right? By spinning your magnet at a higher rate of speed in order to be able to do what? Gain speed, lose mass. Right? Be more light, less mass, higher speed. That's letting go of what we hold in memory, which I call baggage. The same way that an engine of creation that's going down the tracks, doesn't want to have any baggage. Okay, that's a single engine. It means I'm a server. Okay, which means I'm routing traffic at a very high rate of speed. Okay? That's a server. That's what it means to be in love and service forever. That's a multiversal hub server. That's a hell of a firewall. That's the fastest fire ring. Okay, so now I'm making a list of all the crimes that I'm experiencing. So this is where trust comes in. Remember the labels in Congress where, hey, if I'm a corporation, I'm in the business of making money, right? And I find a lot of different ways to cut shortcuts, because I'm going to run out of business and can't pay my light bill if I can't accumulate more money than I'm using to make what I do that I tell you. And where am I getting all that? From mama. So I rape the planet in order to do what? Pull it out, pay everybody that's going to rape the planet, right? And then store all that someplace and then use that as raw materials to manufacture and fabricate everything that ultimately gets sold and then trashed back into the planet again. So I realized that as a child, but I went into environmental engineering to sort of get a peg, a benchmark, even though the sun already knows. Okay, when you're thinking about salvage contracts, salvage missions, and what the Bardo point is that Ashadian talked about, right? Which means the sun already knows There isn't enough time for all these units of consciousness that are running software to repair the codes and activate those codes so they can experience more light and less density in which they're healing. So those that are healing and those that aren't healing, right? Because I've experienced a lot of those are what I call captured units, which means their soul's gone, been siphoned off, spirit's gone, been eaten. Right? So I call that a dead light vessel. That's a dead vessel. That's a walking dead. That's the train that you're reading. So you realize this is where spirits get eaten. This is where souls are food. So if you're not familiar with how to operate on a spiritual battlefield with artificial intelligence, right? And that's where identity comes in. Knowing your true self, knowing your true soul self that's running the equipment to maintain the highest speed that you can. And do what? Activate your heart shield, your planetary shield, your galactic shield, and your universal shield. That's your template. So you know the template that you're running. You want to protect it at all costs. That means you maintain your state of harmony, you maintain your state of balance, and experience what love is. So you know from whence you became. So you have a one connection, right? Okay, so now you're motoring, like a buzzsaw, a vortex, right? It basically is cutting down. As a polarity integrator, it means you're collapsing everything that doesn't represent what love is. So if you have a bunch of units of consciousness that are all experiencing a timeline that's represented by an artificial timeline, which is artificial life, which is a 55 harmonic, you want to restore that, okay, which means collapse it, collapse it, collapse it, collapse it, collapse it. Because the more units of consciousness that are experiencing the 55 harmonic, you will collapse what? The pole. So you're going to want to maintain the poles in check. So the work is being done. So all the workers that were doing the work that was getting this done was being done behind the scenes, very quietly, and doing it in ways in which it couldn't be detected, so that we don't lose the work that we're doing or being interfered with. Because the work that we chose to do a long time ago, to come in here exactly when we did in waves, we're connected to each other. We know who we are. We're pals. Okay? And so this is important because when you go into a store and it's advertised on there, right? It's got this in it, this in it, this in it, this in it, this in it. Hell, I can go all the way back to when I was 13 years of age and I realized that there were people taking syringes and putting poison in oranges. Okay? Stuff like that. And deliberately poisoning stuff. Doing that in fast food joints. Doing that in restaurants. The stuff about the energy, which represents the codes that get transferred from hand to hand, shake to shake, implanting you by putting fingers on your shoulder. The food that they touch that you now eat on a table. If I started revealing everything that I was aware of when I was 4 years of age, I wouldn't be able to function. And if I started blowing the horn and let everybody know, okay, that everything that they're consuming, they're being exposed to, because I went into environmental engineering, so I know a lot about what's called toxicology, or what they call the dose-response relationship between what you're exposed to now that you're going to experience later. Because that information, which is represented by codes, is being loaded into your software so that you run it. So you're going to run the execution. You know what an execution is, right? In a biocomputer. That's called an executive function, which means that's a program. Which means those are codes you're going to run. Now you're going to experience what the codes are that you now experience in your biocomputer. Because that's what it is. They're programmers. Software programmers, right? So you see how this works. You need a powerful firewall. That's called a ring of fire. That means you're protecting your shield, which is to protect your race line. In this case, guardian angels, angelics, right? Defined by that DNA template, right? Which means you got a connection to the founder races. The Emerald Covenant, right? I'm Emerald Covenant. That's why my home base is Kauai. Okay, that's why that experience I shared with everybody in 1972 that I had over there, bang! Man, it's like opening up the universe, right? Because of the expansion that I felt through my heart and the amount of energy that I experienced in my heart knocked me physically off my feet. Probably catapulted me into the drink, a half a mile away. If you can imagine that kind of energy, which is sound compression and breakthrough expansion. Whoa. Like being launched into space. The energy was that powerful that I tapped into on that island. Because of the importance of that island. Okay? that Asha Diane talked about in that one video on Voyagers called ESHAYA Story. Because she's been there. And she relayed. She had a speaker contract. If you ever listen to any of her videos, she talked about, I had a commission as a speaker contract. And that's when a lot of the guardian materials were coming up. I think it was sometime in the 1990s, and all the information was beginning to come out, right? And why that was important when it was coming out, because now they're holding that. Now their shield is just exactly like she explained, flame body activation, right? Radio body, dark matter, all the rest of it. Now you begin to run the maps, the codes, the frequencies, the songs of Lyra. You're experiencing being in a state of joy, the dance floor programs. You know, so it's like remembering who we are before the fall of Tara. And how long this has been. This is a long road to hoe if you tried to put it into how fast things are happening simultaneously and how long ago that may seem that it is when you think of it in the way that we define time on a TikTok, you know, a day, a week, and a year. And then you go into millions of years and then billions of years and then like, whoa, 1 trillion years? You know, and how that works at the nano level and trillionths of a second, like trillionth of a nano. Well, how fast does that magnet open and close? As fast as it possibly can, which means you're experiencing eternity. That's the fastest drive motor. That is the prime accelerator of electrons, which is electrified sound and light. That's why you're so sensitive. So sensitive. So the trust issue comes in. Well, who do you trust? Do you trust their products now, especially now? Because you're getting more information to realize they're releasing more toxic stuff in every route they can think of. So this is when you get into the route of exposure, which is what? Inhalation, what we breathe. So you realize what they dump in to the air that we breathe. Okay? Number 2, what we absorb. Right? What we come in contact with, what we absorb. Right? Gene swarming. Then you have what you drink and what you eat. What you come in contact with. You can come in contact with somebody that dumps some stuff in a lake, just like, what is it, Stringfellow acid pits out in Riverside County. Well, I became aware of that. Okay? They don't want to have to spend the money in order to make sure that what they sell you or you're exposed to isn't going to harm you. They don't care about that. They're only interested in one thing as an inverter. That's making money. That means they don't put your life first in what they do, that you experience after they do it. So that's how their mind thinks. These are mad scientists. Okay, so these are mad scientists that have no regard for any life because what drives their motor is money. And the only way that they get that money is by sucking electrons off the accelerators.